Welcome to Dil Ki Recipes on your favorite social media platform. Hi, I'm Dr. Sheeza Mohsin, executive coach, relationship expert, and your coach in this virtual space to support you and your Desi family in America. If you identify as being a person of color, a minority, and having some form of bicultural identity, a major goal of putting this information out is to help you realize you're not alone in this journey. If you identify as a Desi with cultural roots in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, and surrounding areas, trying to meet your life and relationship needs and desires while embracing some beautiful elements of your cultural heritage, Dil Ki Recipes is for you. If you don't identify as a Desi, but have a warm, loving, human being kind of disposition and you want to better yourself, I think you'll find some good stuff in here as well. So let's go on with the show. Hello and welcome to Dil Ki Recipes. I am so excited today because I have a very special guest and the topic is very important, especially for the South Asian community, because it gets a little underserved in terms of the importance. And why is it important? Because it shows up in every element of our life, every element of our relationships. And if that is one thing that can be developed in human beings in general from a very young age, we are already setting them up for success. So my guest today is wonderful Hiba Tanvir. I want to tell you a little bit about Hiba.
Thank you for having me, Shiza.
Hiba, you're an EQ strategist. You've started this boutique EQ consulting firm. You speak about this topic. And most importantly, you have been an educator for about 20 years in early childhood education. I know that you conduct parenting workshops. You've really done a lot of work in community engagement. And now I'm very excited that you have this book coming out that I'm really hoping you're going to talk a little bit about.
Thank you so much, Shiza. First of all, thank you for having me on your show. I have always enjoyed listening to Dil Ki Recipes, and whether it's in a formal setting or informal setting, I have always just admired the work you do, the humanness with which you do it. And so to me, you're someone that I really look up to. So it means a lot to be on your show and to be speaking to you. So first of all, thank you for that. Today, a book that I've co-authored is officially being launched. So it's available
Oh
on
my
Amazon.
goodness! What
And
better day to
so
record
I'm
this? Congratulations!
seriously, thank you so much. So the book, Shiza, is called The Career Breakthrough Playbook. It is something that I have co-authored with 5 other experts and coaches. So it's basically 6 people writing this book together. What's super fun about it, Shiza, is that we 6 have never met. We have 1 person in Germany, 1 in Tunisia, 3 in the US, and 1 in India. And the gentleman who's leading this effort, I was on his podcast a year ago. He kind of hand-selected a few of his guests and said, well, would you like to be on a virtual summit? From that, he said, I am going to be co-authoring a book on strategies needed for success in the AI era. And so each of us had our areas of specialty. So I've written my section on emotional intelligence. What I love about the idea, Shiza, is that it's very conducive to understanding that we have limited time and limited attention. So rather than reading 6 books, this is the one book you read. You have 6 different authors, and each chapter ends with very actionable, laser-focused takeaways. It's not just fluff, okay, oh, this sounds really good, but what do I do with it? It really makes you see how you can apply it. So I'm so excited to be a part of this.
I love the format that you're talking about, Hiba. In today's day and age, when we talk about not watching a movie on a topic, but watching a reel, it has become about conciseness, being succinct in the messaging, because the new generations, and even those of us who are a little bit older, are now trained to consume information in a very specific manner. So I love that you have kind of consolidated all this expertise on emotional intelligence in this chapter. I'm curious to order it.
Right now, it is available on Amazon. There is a Kindle version as well as a paperback version, and it's the Career Breakthrough Playbook.
I love it. So let me just jump into what is really important. I know it's very important in my work, but given that you have just recently written a book chapter on this, talk to me about why emotional intelligence matters. And I know that some of the things we already know, but it's so important to reiterate and emphasize that, especially when we're looking at young men and women. So Hiba, enlighten us a little bit.
So Shiza, I remember since I was like 12 or 13, I was always drawn to books that were like, I wasn't reading the typical romance novels or fashion magazines. I was drawn to books like Conquest of Mind, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And I was very curious to understand the psychology, the reasoning behind why we do what we do. And so just over time, I just knew a lot and learned a lot, and I was fascinated by it. When I graduated and I started working in corporate, I realized that it was a skill I was always kind of recognized for my self-awareness when I would put together trainings that were meant to understand, motivation or why people buy certain things. I kind of realized that I just had a passion for it. And the more, obviously, with my early childhood work, I saw that from a young age, the skill that helps us along the way do more than just grades and more than just being able to have a good bank balance is a very intangible, crucial skill. And that is the ability to be able to manage, regulate, identify our emotions, and build healthy relationships based on that. So you're obviously a mental health expert. You see things, and you're obviously, you're a mental health practitioner. The way I saw it is emotional literacy and developing emotional intelligence is a proactive approach or a proactive step towards the global mental health crises.
I'm loving it. Keep going.
So to me, the way I saw it is before something turns into a headline on a newspaper and an unfortunate headline, long before that, we can say, oh, he had mental or she had mental health problems. Sure. But I think if we kind of go really back from a much younger age, and I'm talking preschool level, if we could give children tools for emotional literacy, we are really setting them up to be able to navigate a lot of the challenging landscapes that lie ahead. What I always like to ask myself, we can talk about the problems in the world all day long. Right? It's easy. It's great, living room, have a cup of tea and talk about the problems. But I always like to ask myself, okay, that's great. You've understood it. What are you doing about it? So working on emotional intelligence and talking and teaching and all of that about it is my little attempt to do my part towards that global mental health crisis.
I'm loving what I'm hearing, Hiba, and it's making me think of two things. One, that I notice all the time in my space as parents of young children, that relationship when it shifts from when your child suddenly develops those abstract thinking skills. We are so happy with our children because they're little and they do whatever we tell them to. We don't have to explain, we don't have to give reasons. We just tell them do this and they're conforming. The issues start when their abstract thinking kicks in and they start asking why? Why do I have to do this? Why? And the resistance shows up. And that's when emotional intelligence is so critical because your child is craving to reason. It's craving to understand how that instruction or that rule or that value is landing on them. And so talk about developing this. And I feel, so the second thing, and I'm very curious, is the idea seems so overwhelming for most parents on what would be black and white steps. It's so much easier for desis to send their kids to a Kumon or, mental math or a Gideon or whatever it is that, develops those writing skills and math skills. Are you talking about a Kumon for emotional intelligence? I just want to know how to simplify that for my listeners because it's such a beautiful skill.
I love the analogy you just used, a Kumon for emotional intelligence. That's fundamentally, I would love that. So Shiza, a lot of just, kind of working in the early childhood industry, my family and I, we own a preschool. We've been in this space for a long time. When I've done workshops, one of the big things I get from parents is a lot of these aha mouth drop moments. Because what I think is we don't talk about is, first of all, acknowledging that parenting can be muddy, it can be confusing, and it can be very lonely. In today's world where everyone is putting on a facade of having it all just right, I make it a big point to talk about my difficult moments, to talk about meltdowns in detail and tantrums that I'm seeing from, my 7-year-old and 13-year-old, because I think it's important to normalize it and to create space. I did a little talk for parents at someone's speech therapy clinic, and a young mother at the end stopped and she came to me. She literally had tears in her eyes and she says, it feels so lonely when I go on play dates because everyone's kid seems to just be doing everything right. Every parent is talking about, oh, my kid is in this and my kid is in that. She said, when you shared your child is having these meltdowns and what they're saying in it, she goes, it felt like I'm not alone. And that's exactly, I think, the intention with which we have to do things is not to create a hierarchy of this is emotional intelligence and your kid is here and they're not good enough. It's to say, hey, we're all in this together. We all deal with the uncomfortable emotions that our child will go through as they're growing up. And the more that I can strengthen my calm and my cortex, I can provide them the support that they need. So to answer your question, okay, that's great. What does that really mean concretely? Simple basic technique is name it to tame. So for most of our children, there's only two emotions. You're happy or you're sad, or maybe you're mad, right? And sad and mad are typically what we go through, helping children to learn that what those emotions sound like, what they feel like, what they look like. So for example, for our preschool is developing like an emotional intelligence curriculum. So every month we focus on an emotion, right? And now this is also happening at public school level, but imagine when you're doing it with preschoolers, they're much smaller. You have to really make it bite-sized. And so something simple, which even our teachers have told me, Ms. Hiba, I feel so much calmer now because I feel like I have tools. So something like our emotion this month is calm. What does calm look like? So if we're reading a book, can we just focus on the faces and say, hey, do you think mommy's looking calm in this picture? How's teddy bear feeling? And children start developing more than just good, nice. So you're working on language literacy, but also emotional literacy. And then every week, like first week of the month will be the self-awareness piece. So when you feel mad, where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your tummy? Do you feel it in your toes? And you get the cutest responses. When I get mad, I feel it in my ears, where I feel it on my nose. But helping them get comfortable with focusing and understanding where they're feeling it. The next week, we focus on the self-management piece. So if you are feeling mad, you're feeling excited, you're feeling worried, what can you do? Like one of the things that I have done a teacher training on and also with parents is the 90-second technique. That, hey, when you feel an emotion, from the start till the end, that emotion runs a 90-second cycle where now your system is flooded with those chemicals and you're feeling angry or you're feeling frustrated. But after those 90 seconds, you get the opportunity to reset, and now you're choosing if you want to re-engage with that emotion. I love using Play-Doh, Sheeza, for a lot of my workshops because I know with our limited attention spans, even the best of knowledge, we're used to, as you said, real-sized information. To me, it's like, how do we keep the mind focused? I'm like, hey, I give everyone Play-Doh to parents, or if I'm doing this work for like a company or whatever, and I'll be like, hey, I want you to think of the last time that you were triggered, and I want you to do whatever you feel like with this Play-Doh to express that. I'll see people throwing it or smashing it, and I put a timer on for 90 seconds, and then when it's off, and literally, as I'm watching people do this, I'm seeing their facial expressions just change over the course of those 90 seconds. And at the end, I say, let's talk about how you felt in the beginning and how you're feeling at 90 seconds. And they'll say, I lost its intensity. And I'm like, because that's when your body has done its piece. Now you have a choice. Now, after 90 seconds, I want you to sculpt something of your choice from it.
I love it. I love it. And I will tell you, Hiba, this is so helpful because a lot of times we're so overwhelmed as parents. And I notice this, something concrete like this is going to be so helpful to even start the conversation. And I love that you gave very, very specific examples on how to grow that in little children. I want to talk a little bit about the South Asian diaspora and how you may notice this being underemphasized or overemphasized or not talked about. I can share perspective from the parent generation. Very interesting how emotional intelligence is noticed in all the generations in our community and our population in terms of what we got from our parents and what we pass on to the next generation. In my field, they say you cannot give to others what you don't have. So a lot of times an emotionally intelligent, relationally intelligent parent is able to mirror and able to inculcate that in their children.
One of the stark things that I noticed, because our school has, obviously it's got a diverse population, one of the things I noticed with Desi parents is that we almost want to delay teaching our children independent skills. So while our other kids at 18 months, and 18 months is little, are learning how to be able to feed themselves, right? That's a life skill. They should be able to manage finger foods, obviously, and they might need a little bit of help here and there. But I see that our Desi parents are like, oh, he's not or she's not used to eating by herself. Can the teacher feed her? Now, okay, obviously a child is new. We understand there's an adjustment, attunement time, and we're happy to help. But the problem is that you can tell that these children are not used to doing anything for themselves. They're used to being baby, which is great when you're 18 months to 2 years. But now these children are moving up and they don't have those skills. That presents a challenge because obviously it affects their gross motor skills. It affects their ability to be able to do things for themselves, participate in learning. Another thing that I notice is we think that the more clingy that we are to our child and the more clingy our child is to us, it's a sign of a really good, strong bond. What we usually tell parents when it's their first time is, hey, it's completely natural for you to be nervous and for the child to be nervous, but the child is looking at you to gauge if this is safe or not. Keep drop off really simple. And when you look secure and confident and saying, hey, I'll come pick you up in just a little bit, have a great time, okay? The child feels, okay, mommy's feeling good about this, or dad's feeling secure, trusts this place and these people, so I'm good. Often what I notice with Daisy parents is excessively wanting to like now look through the windows. Is he okay? Did he eat? Did he sleep? Did he? And a lot of it seems to be coming from a place of fear, as if these functions are kind of what they've tied their identity to as well. And so one of the things we always say is you just work on regulating your emotions and the child is going to be just taking from that. So don't worry about the child. He or she's going to be okay. We've done this long enough to know that they're going to be fine. So when they're crying, it's natural for them to cry, obviously, but normally even in children crying, they'll self-soothe a little bit, right? And then they'll get busy with an activity and then they'll remember, oh my God, I'm in a new setting. And then the crying starts. And that's all normal. We say that's all part of the normalization process. But if you're noticing that a child is just not able to self-soothe, like we're trying to hold them, you're trying to distract them, and they just cannot, that tells you that somewhere they don't, that they don't quite know how to do that. So those are the two things that I kind of commonly notice.
Wonderful. And thank you so much for mentioning that. A lot of times, that dependence that you're talking about, Hiba, becomes a love language for the parent. The more dependent
Well said.
child is, the more they love their parent and the more they can't live without them. Whereas it's so interesting as they launch in life and they are emotionally regulated, that shows up in their confidence, in their self-worth, and then focusing on the academics because they're emotionally regulated. What I am noticing is that there's a delay in emphasizing the importance of developing those skills in our community. That it happens a lot of times at the time that the kid is getting ready to apply for college. And the colleges are saying, well, they see communities very competitive when it goes to higher education because that's the path that most South Asian families take, is they want to make sure their child is secure in their career. Well, right now with AI happening, the skills that are indispensable are your emotional relational intelligence. It's not the academics, because that information can be spewed through artificial intelligence. It's what to do with it and how to make it relatable that depends on that emotional intelligence component, even from a career front. So as parents are delayed in developing that skill, they're actually putting their children at a disadvantage over children that do have that emotional intelligence. Tell me what you're thinking, Hiba.
So Shiza, I'm so glad you said that and I want to add a numerical value to it. For our South Asian parents that are listening to this and saying, oh, this is a nice soft skill to develop, or it's an extra to have, in the AI era, emotional intelligence is the real intelligence. There is no better time to own and flaunt your humanness than now. If you think about it numerically, I say this at my workshops, that if I told you, Shiza, there was a way that you could be getting paid $29,000 more per year, would you leave that money on the table or would you take it? I hope you take it. People with higher IQ earn up to $29,000 more per year compared to their lower EQ peers. So literally, it pays to develop your EQ, because up to a certain point in your career, sure, your IQ, your technical skills, your cognitive abilities are going to take you. But then after that point where everyone kind of is at that same level, it really is your EQ. They're looking for people that know how to collaborate, that know how to handle conflict, that know how to motivate, that know how to build teams and get people to rally behind them. And that is all EQ.
Absolutely. I had somebody I was talking to interviewing me, and they're like, well, given your skills are one of the rare skills that AI cannot duplicate. And I started laughing because so many of my family members, my clients will make fun of it. And they'll be like, yeah, we couldn't find time on your schedule. So, ChatGPT was my therapist. And I'm like, that is hilarious because I get worried about that as well. ChatGPT also is dependent on your emotional intelligence in what you ask it. So if you're asking it to give you reasons on why you should sabotage a relationship, it will give you 7 reasons. It will not be able to tell you maybe, Hiba, this is not a good decision for you. So there is a lot of emotional and relational intelligence capacity. I will feed into what you're saying because I do leader coaching all the time, especially with South Asians who are vying for the top positions. That's all I work with them on is emotional relational intelligence because the technical part, I think our community becomes an expert at doing.
Right.
Where they miss out is that, and I want to validate what you're saying from two perspectives. Executive coaching, that's all I'm working on, is political savvy, organizational savvy, relationship building skills. And those are critical in two areas. One, like you said, the 29,000, it is hundreds of thousands when it comes to senior leadership positions. You cannot lead without emotional and relational intelligence.
Right.
Critical thinking is a very important skill that requires emotional relational intelligence. And even if you don't want to go to leadership track, you will not be able to work with your peers if you are not equipped with strong emotional intelligence. And to your point, if a kid is developing them at an age that you're talking about, 18 months, 3 years, preteens and teens, I can just imagine the phenomenal difference. And that paycheck will absolutely reflect that.
And Shiza, also like think about it. When we put children in preschool and in school, there's an age at which we recognize they need to start learning their ABCs, their numbers, their letters. We're not waiting till fifth grade to teach a child ABCs. So similarly, how is it smart that something as essential as being able to know and identify and regulate our emotions is something we leave for just kind of haphazardly to happen in our 20s, or most likely when we're in relationships, and now we're like, oh wait, someone's talking about emotions? Like, this was such a foreign concept, as opposed to developing the understanding and being able to identify emotions. And I'll share a really brilliant story that just touches my heart. I talk obviously a lot about emotions to my kids. I've got boys, and so I really want to develop that muscle in them. One day I was feeling just, and I always be like, oh, so tell me more about how you're feeling. It'll be like, oh, I just feel bad. And I'm like, oh, tell me more. Let's refine that. And so a few months back, I was having a really just busy, rough day. And so my 13-year-old sees me walk into the room, and he looks up from his phone and he's like, what's wrong? So I'm like, I don't know. I just feel, because I was in that, so downstairs brain, I wasn't even able to identify. But because we'd had enough of these conversations, he was like, you feel overwhelmed. That is exactly what I feel. And I, in that moment, couldn't even figure it out. He goes, you're just overwhelmed, Mama. You're running around. You're doing too many things. And I was like, yeah, what do you think I could do? He was like, come sit with me. And it was so natural because not only was he identifying it, he was trying to do things with it. I said, maybe a hug can help me. And he was like, sure. That engagement made me feel happy because he filled my cup with things that he had learned.
What a beautiful example. You also have amazing kids. This is something you have modeled for your children. And so it's not surprising that they will repeat that for you. That is why it's so important to work on yourself. And clearly, you're not just preaching, you're practicing that. One of the goals for starting Dil Ki Recipes was that a lot of times in the South Asian diaspora, we don't believe or endorse or remember that learning is continuous and lifelong, that you have to continue growing and learning with the times.
So well said. And you're so right. We pride ourselves on having the latest homes, the latest upgrade, the latest cars. What about our thinking, our approach to things? There's no desire to say, hey, there's a better way to parent. There's a better way to show up as a child, as a partner, as a spouse, as a whatever capacity. And that's where I think emotional intelligence lies in this foundation of being able to responsibly, safely, and accurately self-reflect and self-assess.
Absolutely. Every generation, whether it's boomers, whether it's Gen Xers, the year that you immigrate kind of becomes the frozen year in terms of what you think your cultural values are, in terms of where society is in acceptability and so forth. And learning and growth kind of gets stunted in so many ways, unless you make a deliberate attempt to learn, to grow, which is why I'm so excited to launch the webinars and workshops for our communities so they have continuous access to learning. We sometimes would just freeze in that space. A lot of people are like, well, they don't need to learn. They have a master's. They don't need to learn. They have a PhD. And I'm like, well, I have one too. I'm continuously learning. And people laugh when I say, well, I don't know enough about this topic. And they're like, well, you have a PhD. No, that doesn't mean learning has to stop. Yes, you do develop some expertise in it. Hiba, you have 20 years of educational experience. experience, it cannot have grown without continuous learning.
Oh, definitely. And Shiza, I have to say that I've seen you and in different phases of life, I've always just even hearing you speak always gave me like a takeaway. There was just so much innate wisdom. And now to see you launching something, this platform of Dil Ki Recipes, when I see the kind of content that you post, it is so much stuff that people are yearning and craving for in the South Asian community because there's no intelligent voice that understands the mental health piece of it, understands the societal challenges that come with it. Combined with that too, you also are very relatable and human. So it's not like you're just lecturing like I have it all figured out. You're so human and authentic in your approach that you're like, oh my God, I'm not alone. I'm not crazy. You know?
I so appreciate you saying that. And that's the goal, Hiba, that we have this platform and people can access learning. And I'm really excited about the parenting piece, especially because, we need different skills depending on the age group of the children and the young versus preteens versus teenagers, having healthy relationships with your older adult children and how to do that in a culturally savvy way because our kids are bicultural. The one last thing I want to discuss, Hiba, is the gender difference. How our community, from my perspective, as I see also, I'm seeing what has been invested in and I'm seeing these grown-ups, that we underemphasize the importance of emotional skills for boys versus girls.
So she's at two things. At the preschool level, at this early childhood level, there's even girls at this age, and I'm talking, we're talking 18 months to 4 or 5 years. You notice that girls from a young age are trying to keep their emotions together. So even if they're crying, it's more whimpering. They're trying to modulate even the loudness of the crying, or they're trying to self-soothe. Whereas boys are very open with their crying.
They're letting it out.
Who cares about who I'm disrupting? So that's definitely the most basic thing. This excuse that we make, which is that it's normal. Boys are like that. Boys will be naughty. Boys will be louder. Boys will lose it. Emotions are emotions. And as parents, it is our duty when we have children to make sure that we do whatever we can in our power to raise girls and boys that are using their emotions in a healthy way for themselves and for others. And so what does that mean? That means that mad is an emotion that is considered very acceptable for boys. So when boys say, oh, I'm not emotional, I literally had this conversation with my teen. We were having a tough conversation and he's like, I just struggle in expressing softer emotions. And he goes, I'm not emotional like. I said, you're very emotional. And he was like, no, I'm not. I said, you're very emotional. I said, look at how well you express your anger. And he kind of looked at me awkwardly. I said, anger is an emotion. And you express it so well. You do so much justice. You have the expressions, the movement, the sound, everything for it. So you have that muscle. I said, and that's what convinces me that you are as capable of expressing love and care. Obviously,
I
you
love
want
it.
to hear.
I love it, Hiba. That I think that is so beautifully expressed. And what a way, because I'm always promoting the idea of really building from strengths. And what a way to frame the strength of expressing anger. A lot of times, our culture is enabling some of those dysfunctions because we're giving permission to our boys to not have to do anything about developing skill in that area.
And Shiza, you know what I notice is we reserve the emotion of mad for boys and sad for girls. So it's not okay for a guy to be sad, that's weak. And it's not okay for a girl to be mad because that's not feminine. It's unhealthy because the girls are getting sadder, the boys are getting madder. And now we're trying to put these people in relationships and we're not setting up for success.
Absolutely. And it starts at such a young age.
So I'm a strong believer that if there's one skill that you invest in, which is going to have exponential return on investment, it really is emotional intelligence because it affects your mental health, your physical health, and also academic health, but most importantly, your relational health. And we, at the end of the day, are social beings. When we don't equip our children with skills needed to build long-term healthy relationships, we're setting them up on a path where they're more vulnerable to depression, to anxiety, to bad company, to substance abuse. When you think of this skill, don't think of it as fluff. think of it that in today's world, where these children have so many more challenges, when you set them up with emotional regulation skills, with being able to talk about their emotions, with being able to regulate their emotions, you really are setting them up with a skill that will reap long after you're gone. And for someone down the road, whether they're a leader, whether they're a parent, whether they're a spouse, whether they're whoever, to say, wow, this person, XYZ, was a pleasure to work with because they made me feel safe. They made me feel seen. They made me feel heard. Let's strive to raise those kinds of children.
I love it. Thank you so much, Hiba, for spending time with us and for sharing this very, very valuable gift of really iterating the importance of emotional intelligence and developing that. And to all our listeners, continue tuning in. Hiba's information, Hiba, we're going to share where people can get in touch with you if they want to work with you. I wish you so much success in this endeavor. Cannot wait to get my hands on your book. And thank you so much for making time.
Thank you for having me, Sheeza. And I have to say that I have so much respect for the work you do, for the person you are. You've been an amazing mentor and someone I've always looked up to because you just have such a beautiful way of helping and uplifting everyone around you.
Please remember to keep listening and watching as part of your weekly self-care and learning ritual. You know there are lots of commonalities in our lives, relationships, in our joys and struggles. And my hope is that this material will help you expand your perspective, give you some clarity on how to think about things, and ultimately make you feel better and sorted about your life and relationships. Hope you have a fulfilling and wholesome day.